Hello, this is Shamama Rising Birth Journey class, and we're talking about fear. And I wanted to just take a moment to talk about, there's sort of this idea of the perfect birth and creating this ideal in your head. And, it may not always match the ideal in your head, the birth that you have. So, how do we reconcile this? And for some of you, if you have one of the causes that might, ahead of time give you the information that you do need a C-section, that's going to be something you plan for, that could be a real letdown for somebody who had wanted to have a natural childbirth vaginally. So how do we handle both the fear and the letdown of that? Well, one thing that we've come up with that's worked really well is, let's say you eat, this works for if you know you have to have a section or if you're preparing for anything. You want to treat this C-section as miraculous as the natural parts of your labor. And ways that you can work the shamanic component into a hospital or hospitalized birth, a great way to do this is to take a time before the birth to meditate on the experience of entering the hospital. And so you could go through this a couple different ways. If you wanted to experience, one example would be like you have to get an ambulance is coming for you. So you could walk, and this is a great thing to do with your partner. You could walk through the steps of, getting into the ambulance. But what you do here is in your meditation, you are going to create protective and magical triggers in your mind. So when you see them, they're going to make you feel calm. And it's kind of like hypnosis. You're going to program yourself that when you see the EMT, you're going to go calm. Or when the hospital doors open, you're going to feel so calm and so loved and so protected. And when the nurse comes into the room, this is a sacred space, your room now. And so how do you do that to your room to make a new room that you've gone into? You're not going to be in the headspace necessarily during your labor to do anything with the room. So what you're going to do is sort of project forward and just think about all the different scenarios and embed all these different outcomes with magic and bliss and sacredness and power. And so it's really good to work this simultaneously with knowing who will intake you at your hospital. So, some of you might be birthing at the hospital with a midwife. Some of you might be birthing at a birth center that's like adjacent or near a hospital. And some of you might be birthing at home. And so going to the hospital that would intake you and just seeing it for yourself is a huge way to break through some of that fear. So that's one option, is to actually go there and meet the team of people that you might encounter. Now remember, the doctor on staff is going to be the one who helps you. So if you're able to meet them all, that would be ideal, right? You also, though, when you're going to the hospital, make sure that the people that are coming with you, and this is where having a doula is really important. You want a doula that speaks hospital, who speaks hospital but trusts natural, okay? So that's a really powerful doula to have, because when you are in labor at a hospital, you need to have an advocate. And your partner is probably not going to be that person, and your mom probably isn't going to be that person, because they're emotionally tied into your experience. But your doula is the perfect person to advocate for you, to make sure that you are choosing everything that's going to happen to you, that there's no big surprises, and that you, if there's a drug that they want to administer, that you're okay and that you're on board with it. Sometimes things can happen fast at the hospital, and there's a lot of assumptions that are made. And even though you have the right to stop them, sometimes if you don't know to stop them, or at least take a pause and question them, it'll just kind of flow that way. So having a really good birth plan and working with a doula who understands how a hospital functions is really, really key. This can really help you also deal with that fear, knowing that you have an advocate. It can take a lot of the pressure off of you. So that's really key. But from going back to the meditation, a really, really good one is the minute you go through the hospital doors, know that everybody that is there has had the best sleep that night. They're all in the best moods. They are eager and happy to support you through this amazing part of your journey. And this is exciting. And so that's the immediate thing you want to think of when you go through those doors, that you're held. So if you can make the experience through this programming of your own imagining of it, feel held the minute you go through those doors, or the minute you're in the ambulance, the minute you're in your bedroom. So those are 3 different entry points that you can focus on in a meditation. So ambulance, hospital doors, and room. And fill all of those with magic. And so room could be the minute you're on the bed, or the minute that they have the IV in, or the minute you walk through the door of your room, that you feel at peace, held, supported, that they have your back. So what does it mean to make something magic? What I mean by that is doing some type of ritual that embeds it in your head. And this could just be a dialogue where you say the words, when I go through the door, I'm going to be completely supported. The minute I see the hospital lights, I'm going to be completely supported. So you could think of it as a mantra, and you don't have to spend a ton of time on this. You could go through it once. If you have a lot of fear about the hospital, or C-sections in particular, or just anything about what might happen to you at a hospital, an ambulance ride, those kinds of things, you might want to work through it more. So it could be part of your preparation. You might add to, let's say if you're doing hypnobabies, you might add maybe before you go into a hypnobaby trance, you do a little bit of work. Or even, hypnobabies is a great one because you learn how to, like, okay, when my finger goes down, I'm going to completely relax. You can use that inside of a scary situation, or something that, like, if you don't usually feel comfortable in hospitals, the minute you go through the doors, turn your, turn down, go into totally mellow mode. Or you could do a separate meditation that just deals with this fear, and you could go through all the scenarios and say, when I get to the hospital, I'm going to feel supported. When I walk into my room, I'm going to feel supported. You could write down on a piece of paper and you could burn it. That's the fun thing about magics, is it's really, there's a lot of play and there's a lot of make-believe that is a part of it. And so when we're talking about changing how we feel about something, ritual and meditation can be really useful tools to shift your perspective, perception and perspective, really. And so working with yourself enough times where you feel, okay, I think I can handle it now, and reframing the experience from being the worst experience you could ever imagine to being a life-saving, amazing miracle of modern medicine, might help you through that. And I think at this point, it's really good to see the C-section. It's like if you broke your leg or if you got in a car accident, you'd want to go directly to the hospital. And so when you're at a point where it is an emergency now, then you can kind of release that feeling of hospitals are scary, because in this situation, they're like the best at doing this type of thing. And I think there's a lot of confusion around that when it comes to labor, because so much of labor is a really natural thing. It doesn't really belong in a hospital setting. It's only until it becomes an emergency situation that a hospital is like the perfect place to be. So being able to see those differences in your mind, and knowing that if you come out of, if you go into an emergency space, that then a hospital is a great place to go to. But up until that point, your home or a birth center is the most optimal place to be. One other thing that you can do is you can wear some type of talisman or hold it. Prayer beads work great. Anything with like a stone made from crystals or stone, you can use that in your meditation. And you can sometimes just do it like, oh, this is like a little button. And when like even if it were a ring, you could say like, when I touch the ring, I feel peace. So you could work with your meditation in such a way where you bring a talisman or an amulet with you. You will not be able to bring it with you in surgery, but your partner can. And even some situations, they might like have it nearby or something. But just knowing that it's there, and it can be a focal point for these meditations that I'm talking about, where you sort of set up yourself for peace around even an emergency situation. You put that energy into the stone. You know that you have the stone there. You know that, and you tell your birth team, like, one of you is in charge if this goes into an emergency place. One of you is in charge of bringing that to the hospital. And so these are just great ways to, reprogram ourselves to be flexible, to have the journey that we're going to have.